I'm John Archibald with Reckon for AL.com, here with Senator Bill Hightower, our latest Republican candidate for governor. Thank you for coming by.
Thank you, John.
Looking forward to getting to know you. You obviously have a high place in Alabama politics, but you're kind of sort of a late to the game. I mean, you really got elected in 2013, and now you're running for governor. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what your philosophy of governing is.
Well, you know, I used to live in Birmingham, and then we moved to Mobile as a child, and married my wife. Been married 38 years. We met when I was 12. She was 11, but we waited until I was 20 to get married. She was 19. But we've had a great journey together, and part of that journey has been working for large U.S. corporations around the world, stock-traded companies that have trained me very well about how to go into a business and turn a business around so it runs properly.
You've been in Asia and other parts of the world and came back here?
That's right. Well, as growing up in Mobile, and then I went to, of course, undergrad and got a finance degree, and then I went to Vanderbilt to get an MBA. Then from there, I started to work in companies in St. Louis and Detroit and overseas, and lived in Pennsylvania. Actually, it was in Pennsylvania that a remarkable event happened that was pivotal for us. One of the planes from 9/11 crashed near our homes, and we just decided it's time to go home. This is a new day. So we moved to Mobile, and we started other businesses there. My wife and I operate together, and it's been delightful. And it was there that I decided to run for the Senate.
You're in, I think I understand, corporate strategic consulting. What does that mean?
Well, I work on a number of issues. We have retail stores along the coast. My wife runs our real estate business. And then we work together on a lot of issues. One is business development. A lot of what I did in the corporate setting, supply chain management, helping with customer relations, trying to negotiate large contracts, all that was excellent mentorship to prepare me for something like the governor. I don't believe we've had a governor with this kind of background. Well, I don't know when we've ever had one.
What do you think Alabama needs most in a governor?
Well, I want to bring honor back to the governorship. That would be one. But in addition to that, and this is the reason I'm running, as a senator, I saw the incredible vacuum of leadership that was occurring in the executive. And I thought, I can do that. I've done that before. We really haven't had that leadership. We've had a lot of distractions. And I want to bring that to bear in Montgomery, along with business practices that are best practices, global best practices, a knowledge of global business, bring it to Montgomery to try to help the state reach a new level. I think we can do a lot better.
Do we have enough money to run this state the way it needs to be run?
That's a great question. I think that we perhaps need more revenue, but the problem is because the way we do business in Montgomery, with an earmarked budget that's 90% earmarked, with a two-budget system, we don't know. So the only resolution to not having enough revenue is to raise taxes. Now, I have voted against every tax increase that we've had since I've been there. It's not that I'm so hard set up against that, but it's not getting to the real problem, and that's what I want to get to. Having a 90% earmarked budget is a lot like Nick Saban sending in his team of 11 guys to play in the field and never being able to change out 9 of them. They're going to get tired, they're going to get presumptuous about their position, and they can only change out 2. You can't move from offense to defense. That's what our budget's like. So the issue is maybe about revenue, but we do not know until we deal with that budget problem.
So we keep kicking the can down the road, and we try to figure out what we're going to cut this year, what we're going to cut next year without raising revenue. Would you consider alternative sources, lottery, any kind of gambling?
I want to try to deal with the problem. The main problem is an earmarked budget that's 90%, that no other state in the nation does it. No one's writing books about this is the way to do government. 90% of the budget is earmarked. I want that solved first, then let's talk about revenue. In fact, I think the earmarked budget, legislators hide behind it. I think that it caps the money for education because we say, hey, look, education's got the income tax coming in. We don't need to give them any more revenue. But if and that budget system was set in place in 1940, don't you think our priorities have changed? Well, we can't reorganize and reprioritize that way. So let's talk about fixing the core problem, and then let's talk about revenue.
In the meantime, we do have all these issues, whether it's rural health care, whether it's the prisons, which I guess last year was the big prison year, but that problem still looms. How do we fix those things, and while trying to figure out what to do about earmarks?
Well, I was very involved in the prison issue, and I think Governor Bentley had an idea of consolidating all the prisons to one prison. There were some good aspects to that because we could subset all the prisoners from violent crime to mental health and treat them differently. Right now, we don't have the ability to do that. Additionally, that prison would allow society or the community to come into the prison more and try to rehabilitate and bring these prisoners into society again after they're out. But that's not going to pass. Right. Because it means closing down prisons in rural areas, and sometimes that is the only jobs they have. Those are the only jobs they have. So we've got to think differently about that. And I think that we need to approach the problem differently in that building more and more prisons isn't going to solve the problem. We've got to deal with the supply chain or the supply of prisoners into the prison. A lot of that's coming from our education system, which students graduate and they don't know what they're going to do next. We treat every student the same. They're all going to go to college, and that's not the case. I want to set up a dual track. One's academic for college students. The other one is for trades or something. Get a cosmetology certification. Get a welding certification. When you graduate, you can go to work. You don't wait to go to community college. How do I do that? Well, there's a lot of underutilized assets in the community college system. I want to bring them in to work on doing those certification programs in the high schools.
Do you think that there are people in the prison system that shouldn't be there?
Yeah, I read a book recently called Just Mercy by a gentleman, an attorney in Montgomery, and it really shed a lot of light on the whole prison situation, and sometimes the prisoners and what we can do best to rehabilitate them or help them. See, the families of those prisoners, 90% of them don't ever want to see their loved one that's locked up again. So when they come out, they have nowhere to go. So there's a tremendous amount we can do to help the families prepare. I think one of the more effective programs I've ever heard of has nothing to do with government. Church of the Highlands goes into the prisons. They don't just teach Bible. They teach them how life skills so that when they come out, the recidivism is lower.
Would you consider any kind of decriminalization or lesser punishment for marijuana offenses or legalization in any way for revenue purposes?
The use of drugs has become much more common. I'm amazed by it. But I think one of the reasons we have more drug use is because children or young adults don't have purpose. They don't know what they're going to do next. I want to try to approach that by giving them purpose while they're in the high school. As far as changing the laws about sentencing, I want to look to our judges and to those in the state that understand that and deal with it every day. And I would, because a lot of these people are being caught. They're going into a one-size-fits-all situation, and they're going to what I call the dark side. If we can keep them out of it, I work with the juvenile hall in Mobile to try to keep these younger people out of the justice system. Because once they go in, we treat them all the same. And I think that that's where our pressure ought to be.
You're chair of the Constitution and Ethics Committee, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
There's a lot of talk about our ethics law right now. Someone, from where I sit, it seems to be that there's generally a bit of an effort to alter that every year for the last decade or so. Do you think the ethics law is sufficient as it stands now?
Well, some changes could be made to it. I've been waiting for the proper analysis to be done.
What would you do to it?
Yeah, I've been waiting for the proper analysis to be done on that. Because the problem is, any changes, we have not had a good history with politicians and the ethics. And I want to get it right, but the issue has to do with the kind of people that we're electing, I think, more than the ethics. You can pass all the ethics rules and laws you want to, but if people want to try to break the law, they're going to do it. I would hope that we get the formula right, but I want to encourage people that are voting to try to pick the right kind of candidate too.
Yeah.
Not the career politician, because once you are there so long, I think you tend to run into problems.
Yeah, and again, from where I sit, we have a tendency of, we have a long history of punishing the politicians when they step across that line, but there are influences across the state that help to lure them into that situation. I mean, do we need to look at the corruptors as much as the corruptees?
Well, I tell you, when I ran for the Senate, Montgomery Special Interest spent $1 million to keep me out, and I spent $100,000, and I won with 64% of the vote. So I'm in no way an insider. So I don't know about
I think Mike Hubbard supported your opponent, if I remember correctly. Is that right?
He did. He's the one that gave all the money. So I never want to be that insider. I'm not in that Montgomery bubble. Matter of fact, I guess when I was thinking about whether to run for governor or not, I was really thinking about going back to full-time business. You know, being in the Senate's a part-time job. I still have businesses to run. But I thought the need was so great. I said, okay, if Alabama wants a businessman to be their governor, I'm their guy, and I'm going to make a go of it and see what I can do. I think we can do a lot better in Alabama.
You've been, I think, quite vocal in your own area in Mobile about being a supporter for Mobile, as I guess one of your potential opponents, Tommy Battle, has been in Huntsville, saying, and had a pretty good base in those areas. How do you convince the rest of the state that you can be just as committed to those other parts of this place?
That's a great question. Look, I am the only candidate in this race that has a voting record. Everybody else can say that they're for this or for that. You can go and look at my voting record. And my record doesn't just rest on Mobile. What I want people to realize is my hard work for Mobile, and I think I have a reputation for it, can turn into hard work for Alabama. I've already done things like I brought a Polish delegation in to go throughout Alabama and look at businesses. I brought a Belgian delegation. This was my initiative because I think we're so great. We have such a great state. And that wasn't just Mobile-centric. We started out in other parts of the state and then moved down south. So I want to leverage all of that.
So, well, I guess this thing's going to intensify. It's a difficult thing to be running against an incumbent governor, I guess, particularly. Kay Ivey presents some interesting situations. How do you campaign against Kay Ivey?
Well, I do so by working harder than anybody else. I think I put 15,000 miles on my car in 3 months. My wife's with me. She's not behind me, not in front of me. She's with me. And look, I realize that to win in Alabama, you have to get out and meet people. It's not a de facto presumption that the incumbent's going to win. That would be the wrong assumption. In fact, historically, the incumbent didn't win whenever they moved from the lieutenant governor to the governor's position. Both times they've lost.
And what is the one thing you want people to know most about you as a person, not a politician?
Well, I have a history of working with people. I've got a history of working in difficult situations. I get all the people around the table. In negotiations that I've done on the corporate side, those negotiations have been tough. But you can't just push people away. I want to be known as somebody that gets people around the table and tries to reach a solution and then push it forward. And let's get on with pushing it forward. In addition, John, I'd really like to be known as somebody that casts the vision for the next decades, 3 or 4 decades. I think a lot of people are talking about what's bad about government, what's bad, what's bad. I don't hear people talking about the vision. and I want to talk about that vision. We've come from some incredible places historically. To me, that says some great things about our future.
All right. That's Bill Hightower, running for governor. Thank you very much for coming in. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, John.